Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight we begin a long journey through ancient forests, along forgotten stone pathways, into the heart of a civilization built between the stars and the earth. A civilization that measured time not in years, but in sacred cycles. A people who believed that every sunrise was a conversation with the gods. This is the world of the Maya. As always, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time you are now down below in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Whether you're settling in for the night or just curious about where these legends came from, I'm glad you're here. Don't forget to subscribe and share it to someone who loves it too. As daylight fades in your room, let your mind drift back thousands of years across the Gulf of Mexico, where the warm winds carry the scent of salt and blossoms. Before us, the Yucatan Peninsula stretches out beneath the sky, a vast green canopy shimmering in the golden light of dawn, a world untouched by modern eyes. A land of ceiba trees reaching toward heaven, howler monkeys calling across steep valleys, and beneath the foliage, stone cities sleeping in silence. But once, these stones echoed with prayers, music, and the footsteps of priests and kings who believed they were intermediaries between this world and the next. Tonight, we return to their beginning. Our story begins not in a city, but in small farming villages around 2000 BCE. The Maya were not yet builders of pyramids. They were people of the maize fields, people who lived close to the earth. Their earliest days were shaped by the rhythm of rain, sun, and soil. Maize was not just a crop, it was their origin, their flesh, their being. In the sacred Mayan creation story, the gods formed humankind from corn dough. To eat was not merely survival, it was communion with the divine. Villages grew into communities, and communities into ceremonial centers. The people began shaping earthen pyramids, aligning them to the sunrise. The first sparks of what would become one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth were taking form. We walk now into such a place. The air is still. A young priest stands before a simple altar, burning copal resin, whose smoke curls into the sky, carrying prayers upward. Around him, families gather not to witness a spectacle, but to give thanks, to acknowledge that every breath and every harvest is part of a cosmic pattern. The Maya did not see themselves as individuals moving through time. They believed time moved through them. As centuries passed, the Maya began to look beyond Earth, toward the heavens. They noticed that certain stars returned to the same place in the sky at precisely predictable intervals. They watched Venus, which they called Noj-Ek, the great star. They saw it vanish and return, and they believed that Venus carried messages between the gods and mankind. Thus began the sacred science of the Maya. They developed a calendar unlike anything seen before. It did not merely count days, it described the nature of each day, its energy, its destiny, its spiritual significance. To be born on a certain day was to be assigned a path, a pattern written in the stars. Time, to the Maya, was alive. And so a structure formed in their world, the long count calendar, designed not for years or centuries, but for epochs of creation. They believed the universe had been born before, destroyed and reborn again, and would be once more. The architecture of their timekeeping was not linear, but cyclical. Life, death, rebirth. Daylight, darkness, dawn. Every temple, every city that would soon rise, and rise they would, was a reflection of this cosmic order. What was life like beneath these towering structures? At dawn, the mists lifted from the jungle floor as women ground maize on stone mecates, turning corn into masa dough for tortillas. Children played in the courtyards, chasing small dogs and turkeys that wandered freely. Men prepared stone tools, checked fishing nets, or harvested cacao and squash from nearby gardens. In these early centuries, there were no great wars, no towering kings, only shared belief, community, ritual. Every home had a small shrine. Every meal began with quiet prayer. The Maya saw themselves as caretakers of balance, a bridge between the gods and the growing world. And in the evening, when stars emerged, families gathered to hear stories passed down across generations, stories of hero twins who played ball against the gods of the underworld, stories that explained not just how the world came to be, but why it must be protected. Slowly, power began to coalesce. Certain families claimed descent not just from great ancestors, but from the gods themselves. Kings were no longer merely leaders, they were intermediaries. Their bloodline was sacred. Each ruler held the duty to perform rituals that kept time moving, that kept the cosmos in balance. To sit on the throne was not a privilege, it was a burden. The weight of the universe on one's shoulders. And so began the era of divine kingship. We stand now in the shadow of a massive stone stela, freshly carved. On it, a king is depicted wearing a jade mask, his headdress shaped like the sacred bird of creation. Below him, glyphs record the date of his birth in the long count calendar, marking him not as a man, but as a living axis between worlds. When he breathes, time turns. When he performs ceremony, the gods awaken. It is this belief, this merging of humanity with the divine, that would lead to the construction of some of the greatest architectural marvels in human history.
The horizon brightens with the first light of the sun, and from deep within the rainforest, stone begins to rise. The simple ceremonial centers of the early Maya have transformed. Where once stood earthen mounds, now stand white limestone pyramids, glistening under the dawn sky like mountains carved by gods. This is the birth of the great Maya cities. Here, in the lowlands of what is now Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico, the first true city-states awaken. Tikal, Calakmul, Copan, Palenque, each a kingdom in its own right. Their rulers are no longer just chiefs, they are divine lords, chosen by destiny, recorded in sacred glyphs, and celebrated in stone. We travel now to Tikal, deep in the jungle of the Piten Basin. Imagine standing in the great plaza at sunrise. Before you, two towering pyramids pierce the morning mist. From the top of Temple I, known as the Temple of the Great Jaguar, a priest emerges to greet the sun. His headdress, woven with quetzal feathers, shimmers with emerald light. As he raises a jade scepter toward the sky, the sound of conch shells echoes through the air, bouncing between stone walls, announcing the beginning of a sacred day. Below, thousands gather. Merchants, farmers, nobles, and warriors, all united in reverence. Tikal is not merely a city, it is a cosmic instrument, designed so that every shadow, every angle, every building aligns with the heavens. The people do not see themselves as residents of a city, but as participants in a celestial drama. For in the Maya world, the city itself is alive. In these rising kingdoms, the king, known as the Ajao, is more than a ruler. He is the living embodiment of divine will. When a Maya king ascends the throne, the date is recorded in the long count calendar. His lineage is recited not from mortal ancestors, but from gods, heroes, and deities who shaped the universe. The king wears a serpent crown, symbolizing the ancient sky dragon, the bridge between realms. His duty is sacred, to maintain harmony between heaven, earth, and the underworld. This balance is not symbolic, it is believed to be real. If the king performs rituals correctly, rains will fall, crops will flourish, the stars will continue their dance. If he fails, the cosmos itself may fall out of alignment. To be king in the Maya world is to carry the heartbeat of creation within your own chest.
But even in a world of sacred duty, ambition rises. Far to the north, the city of Calakmul begins to grow in power. Like Tikal, it is ruled by a divine king, but this city seeks more than harmony. It seeks dominion. Two great powers now stand in the forest, like jaguars preparing to clash beneath the moonlight. For over 150 years, Tikal and Calakmul will engage in a silent war, a struggle not always fought with armies, but with alliances, marriages, and diplomacy. Cities choose sides, trade routes shift. The Maya world becomes a chessboard of kings and queens, each move changing the destiny of thousands. Yet through all this, the people continue their rituals. Priests continue to chart the stars. Life continues in divine rhythm. Step inside the walls of Tikal. Beneath the towering pyramids, life flows with gentle rhythm. The markets awaken with the sound of barter. Women dressed in woven huipils trade cacao beans, salt, and obsidian blades. Artisans carve jade and shell into necklaces shaped like sacred animals. Scribes paint hieroglyphs onto bark paper codices, their hands steady, their minds focused on preserving the memory of the gods. Homes are arranged around courtyards, each with its own shrine. Children run between doorways, laughing, unaware that their world is part of a great cosmic tapestry. And above them always stands the pyramid, towering, timeless, reminding all who live in its shadow
that life is sacred, brief, and part of something eternal. As daylight fades, we climb the steps of a temple. From here, we watch the sun descend behind the horizon. As it falls, the temple casts a long shadow across the plaza, aligning perfectly with a carved stone marker. This is no accident. The Maya designed their cities so that every movement of the sun, moon, and stars was captured in architecture. The city is not just a place to live, it is a machine for measuring time. Each equinox, the sun would illuminate specific carvings. Each solstice, the shadows would fall in precise patterns, confirming that the gods were still in balance and that the ceremonies of the priests had succeeded. Time was not separate from life. It was the breath of the world. And so, as the stars emerge over the jungles, the Maya enter their classical period, a time of monumental architecture, groundbreaking astronomy, divine kingship, and a flourishing of art and writing. The forest is now filled with cities, each shining like a constellation on the earth, mirroring the heavens above. The air is warm and fragrant with blooming flowers. In the distance, the call of a quetzal bird echoes over the towering trees. Ahead, the skyline is not of mountains, but of pyramids, observatories, and palace towers rising into the mist. The Maya have entered their golden age. This is the classical period, a time when knowledge, ritual, and architecture reached extraordinary heights. The Maya world is no longer a collection of villages or emerging cities. It is a radiant civilization of scholars, astronomers, poets, and kings who read the language of the universe. The jungle now holds secrets not just of stone, but of time. We stand atop a grand pyramid in Palenque, where the wind brushes softly against carved limestone panels. Below, a sprawling palace complex unfolds. Courtyards, observatories, royal tombs, and aqueducts channeling mountain water into the heart of the city. The Maya were not just builders, they were astronomers in stone. Temples were aligned so that the sun would cast sacred patterns during solstices. Observatories were constructed with narrow windows aimed precisely at the point where Venus appeared on the horizon. Every shadow, every beam of light that passed through these structures had meaning. To them, architecture wasn't merely for worship, it was worship. As night falls, we enter an observatory chamber. Inside, a priest writes in glyphs upon bark paper codex by torchlight. His face is calm, his movements deliberate. He is calculating the cycles of Venus, knowing that the planet disappears for 8 days, rises for 263 mornings, then vanishes again for 50 days. This cycle repeats with perfect precision. And they wrote it down. The Maya created 3 great systems of time. First, the Tzolk'in, 260-day sacred calendar, used to interpret destiny, spiritual energy, and the fate of individuals. Second, the Hab calendar, tracking the agricultural seasons, solstices, and equinoxes. Third, the long count calendar, measuring vast cycles of creation across thousands of years. Together, these calendars interlocked like gears of a celestial machine, predicting eclipses, harvests,
and even the rebirth of cosmic ages. To the Maya, time was not a straight line. It was a heartbeat.
Let's walk through a Maya city at the height of its power. Morning mist curls through narrow streets lined with homes built of plastered stone. Women grind maize on smooth stone metates, the soft, rhythmic sound echoing through doorways. Children are taught glyphs and numbers, not just to read, but to understand their place in the cycles of the gods. Merchants from faraway lands arrive in the markets, carrying obsidian blades from central Mexico, seashells from the Caribbean, and jade from distant valleys. Cacao beans are currency. Feathered cloaks shimmer in shades of emerald and sapphire. Nearby, in sacred courtyards, scribes record royal events, myths, and astronomical data. They are revered not as writers, but as keepers of memory. At sunset, the people gather in the plaza. Torches flicker. The scent of burning copal fills the air. A procession begins. Priests appear, their bodies painted with white ash and red pigment, symbolizing life and death. Their headdresses carry serpent and jaguar motifs, creatures believed to travel between worlds. In their hands they carry obsidian blades, bowls of water, and woven baskets of sacred offerings. The rituals they perform are not merely symbolic acts. They are mechanisms that keep the cosmos moving. Through ceremony, the Maya believe they are maintaining the order of the universe, ensuring the gods continue to support life, rain, and time itself. Without ritual, the world could end. As the stars emerge, a royal figure ascends a platform. This is not war, not punishment, but offerings of blood to the gods. The Maya believed that the gods used their own blood to create the world, and humans, especially kings and queens of divine bloodlines, must return this essence to maintain balance. A ruler draws a thorn-studded rope through their tongue. The blood falls onto bark paper, which is then burned. As the smoke rises, it is believed to carry prayers directly to the celestial realm. The crowd is silent. In this act, the king is not suffering. He is communing, bridging heaven and earth. To the Maya, blood is not pain, it is power. As we look out over the glittering skyline of temples and towers, we see a civilization at its pinnacle. Cities flourish, trade expands, art and writing thrive. The Maya are masters of stone, spirit, and stars. But in the distance, a quiet tension forms. For every great civilization that rises must someday face challenge, not from within, but from within. The Maya civilization has entered its radiant peak. Cities are no longer isolated centers of worship. They have become powerful kingdoms, each with its own dynasty, army, trade networks, and spiritual obligations. If you were to soar above the forests, you would see a vast network of causeways, white stone roads called sakbeob, connecting city to city like threads in a great tapestry. Through these arteries, merchants travel with jade, obsidian, salt, honey, and cacao. But flowing between these routes is something even more powerful than goods: influence. Two cities now dominate the Maya world. Tikal, the mighty city in the heart of the Guatemalan jungle, stands proud beneath towering pyramids. Its nobles claim descent from cosmic serpents. Its rulers are said to channel the power of the sun itself. Calakmul, hidden deep in the forests of Campeche, rises as its rival, a powerful kingdom driven by ambition. Calakmul's kings do not merely wish to rule their own people. They strive to control the entire Maya lowlands. And so begins a dance of shadows, alliances, and quiet war, lasting not days or years, but generations. City-states across the region begin to take sides. Some pledge loyalty to Tikal, aligning with the kingdom of the sun. Others swear allegiance to Calakmul, becoming part of the Snake Kingdom. Marriage is as powerful as the sword. Kings marry queens from distant lands, tying cities together in sacred bloodlines. A royal wedding is not a celebration. It is a treaty, binding destinies across hundreds of miles. Envoys travel through jungle paths carrying jade beads and hieroglyphic scrolls sealed in wax. Messages sent not in words alone, but in cosmic meaning, signaling allegiance, tribute, or rebellion. The Maya world is alive with political intricacy, more subtle and calculated than any battlefield. Let us follow a merchant caravan. They begin in the highlands of Guatemala, where obsidian, a black volcanic glass, is harvested from ancient mountains. From there, they travel down river routes toward the sea, exchanging obsidian for salt from coastal marshes, feathers from tropical birds, marine shells from distant shores. These trade routes stretch as far as central Mexico and down to modern-day Honduras and El Salvador. In the ports, Maya canoes glide over turquoise waters, filled with cacao beans, wealth in organic form. Jade beads sparkle in the sunlight. Handmade cotton textiles flutter like banners of white and red. Trade is not only economic, it is spiritual. For every object, every stone, every feather carries the energy of the land from which it came. Within these cities, people flourish. The Maya elite live in stone palaces, adorned with murals depicting battles, rituals, and scenes of mythic origin. They dine on turkey, dog, and maize tamales, flavored with chili and cacao.
Jade beads adorn their ears, noses, and lips, polished to perfection to reflect divine beauty. But life in Maya civilization is not only reserved for the elite. The farmers cultivate maize, beans, squash, and chili using raised fields and terracing. The artisans craft pottery, tools, and musical instruments that echo at festivals. The scribes and astronomers record every eclipse, every royal event, every offering to the gods. The children are taught from birth to understand both the visible world and the invisible one. Life is not divided into sacred and mundane. To the Maya, all life is sacred. As twilight approaches, the crowds gather in a great stone arena. Before them lies the Mesoamerican ball court, a long alley flanked by sloped walls. Players wearing padded belts and heavy yokes enter the court in silence. They are not athletes in our modern sense. They are spiritual warriors reenacting the creation myth where the hero twins defeated the lords of the underworld through this sacred game. The ball, made of solid rubber, is struck with hips, shoulders, and knees. To let it fall is to fail before the gods. In this game, victory is honor, but defeat may mean sacrifice. The crowds watch by torchlight, not cheering wildly, but standing in reverent silence, knowing this game is not entertainment. It is cosmic balance made visible. And so the Maya civilization reaches its greatest height. Cities gleam beneath the sun. Kings claim dominion over land and sky. Trade and knowledge flow freely across thousands of miles. But as all civilizations rise, so too do the forces that will test them. For in the next age, the balance of nature will shift. The rains will falter. Rivalries will intensify. The gods, once benevolent, will become silent. A change is coming, not with sudden fire, but with silent drought.
The night sky stretches above the jungles, painted with stars that once guided the Maya in everything they did. The constellations still turn, the planets still move, but something begins to feel different. The winds shift, the rivers dry just a little earlier than before. And though the temples still echo with songs and prayers, a quiet unease begins to grow. This is the beginning of the Maya world's long turning point, a moment when even the most powerful kings and priests will find themselves questioning the favor of their gods. At first, no one notices. The maize still grows, the cities still thrive, and the markets still hum with life. But slowly, the rains become unreliable. One year, they come late. The next year, they barely come at all. For a civilization built around precise cycles, agricultural, celestial, and divine, this is a profound disruption. The Maya don't see weather as random. They see it as communication. A drought is not just a drought. It's a message from the gods. And if the gods are displeased, something in the world
has gone out of balance. Priests gather at the top of temples, gazing at the stars for answers. They study the Venus cycle, the movement of Jupiter, the turning of the 260-day sacred calendar. They search for signs that the gods will forgive or warn. But the sky remains silent. And silence, for the Maya, is terrifying. As the drought worsens, faith begins to fracture. Kings who once claimed divine favor find themselves unable to bring rain. Their rituals grow grander, their sacrifices more desperate. Inscriptions show ceremonies that once honored the gods, now soaked in blood. Royal captives, enemies, even nobles offered to the heavens. But the people begin to wonder, if the kings are chosen by the gods, why do the gods no longer listen? It is not rebellion yet, but it is doubt. And in a world held together by belief, doubt is more dangerous than any sword. City by city, the old alliances begin to crumble. Trade falters, rivalries return. The great web of the Maya world starts to fray. We move now through the once great plazas of Tikal, Palenque, Copan, and Calakmul. The temples still stand tall, but their courtyards are overgrown. The paint fades from murals. The stelae, stone monuments of kings, lie toppled in the dirt. The scribes stop carving names. The record of time begins to blur. It does not happen in one great cataclysm. It happens quietly, over decades, even centuries. Families leave the cities, seeking water and fertile land elsewhere. The jungle slowly takes back what was once stone. By the 9th century, much of the southern Maya lowlands falls silent. The age of monumental cities has ended.
Historians have long asked, why did the Maya civilization fall? There is no single answer, only threads woven together in tragedy. Some say it was climate change, centuries of drought that starved the crops. Others point to warfare, a spiral of endless conflicts between rival kingdoms. Still others suggest social collapse, where peasants, weary of endless taxes and sacrifices, simply walked away. But perhaps it was all of them happening at once. A perfect storm of nature, pride, and time. And yet, collapse is not the right word, for the Maya did not vanish. They moved. They adapted. They survived. While great cities fell silent, others rose in the north, especially Chichen Itza in the Yucatan Peninsula. There, new kings built on the old traditions, combining Maya culture with influences from faraway lands. The pyramids took on new shapes. Serpents of stone slithered down temple steps with the movement of the sun. Even as the old world faded, a new one emerged, still Maya in heart, but changed forever. In small villages, the people continued to plant maize, celebrate festivals, and keep their sacred calendar. The gods were still honored, even if the temples were smaller and the songs quieter. The spirit of the Maya endured, hidden beneath the vines and roots. The classic Maya world may have ended, but the story does not stop here. For centuries later, new powers will rise, carrying the old symbols in new forms. And across the sea, strangers will come, unaware that they are walking into the remains of one of humanity's greatest legacies. The year is somewhere around 820 AD. Deep in the rainforest, towering temples of stone still scrape the skies. Ceremonies continue, fires burn in sacred braziers, and royal scribes still carve the histories of kings into shining limestone. But the crowds that once filled the plazas have thinned. The markets are quiet. The laughter of children has faded. The Maya world, once bursting with life and cosmic purpose, now stands at the edge of an irreversible change. This is not a single moment. It is a slow unwinding, a civilization unraveling beneath the weight of time itself. First, it is Tikal, the jewel of the rainforest. Its rulers, who once commanded armies and honored the gods atop pyramids, now struggle to feed their people. The reservoirs run low. The forests around the city, once carefully managed, are stripped bare for firewood and farmland. The soil, exhausted from generations of use, can no longer produce enough maize to feed its population. Then comes Copan, once a beacon of learning and astronomy. Inscriptions stop appearing. The royal lineage ends with a final king whose monuments speak in tones of desperation, not victory. Calakmul, rival of Tikal, also fades into the mists, its last rulers etched into broken stelae, their faces worn away by centuries of rain. This is not a conquest. This is abandonment. What makes the Maya collapse so haunting is its silence. Unlike many fallen civilizations, there is no great final battle, no burning capital, no invading enemy that claims victory. Instead, the Maya chose to leave. Families gather what they can carry. They leave their stone houses, their painted walls, their altars. They step into the jungle, seeking water, fertile land, and perhaps a new beginning. Why did they leave? First, drought, lasting for decades, starving the land of life. Second, overpopulation, cities too great in number for the fields that fed them. Third, warfare, endless cycles of betrayal and revenge between royal dynasties. Fourth, loss of faith, kings unable to bring rain or victory, their divine power questioned. The great cities do not fall in flame. They fade into the trees. And the rainforest, patient and timeless, rises to claim what was once hers.
If you could travel through the forests centuries later, you would see strange hills rising above the canopy. Covered in vines and strangler figs, they look like natural mounds. But beneath the roots lies stone. Beneath the soil, pyramids, temples, homes. The Maya did not vanish. It is the cities that disappeared into the earth, swallowed by time. The jungle is not a destroyer, but a preserver. It holds their secrets. As the cities fell, the Maya religion itself transformed. Where once kings served as the mouthpiece of gods, now local priests in villages took that role. Rituals became more humble, focused on survival, on rain, harvest, family. The monumental temples were no longer needed. The gods could be spoken to anywhere, beside a river, beneath a ceiba tree, in a simple thatched home. The collapse was not the end of the Maya world. It was a change of age, a turning of the cosmic wheel. Just as the southern cities fall quiet, new powers are growing in the north. In the Yucatan Peninsula, where the land is drier, but the people have learned to harvest the rain in vast limestone reservoirs, a new civilization begins to rise from the ashes of the old. Cities like Ichmol, Mayapan, and above all, Chichen Itza emerge, not with sorrow, but with ambition. The Maya story is not finished. It is simply moving north. As we leave the abandoned temples behind, we walk toward a city that will become a new beacon of power, a city where serpents of stone will descend gleaming pyramids at the equinox, where warriors from far lands will carve their victories into pillars, and where the old gods will take on new faces. The Maya world is transforming from a kingdom of scholars to a kingdom of warriors and mystics.
The great southern cities have fallen silent, swallowed by jungle and time. But far to the north, where the limestone plains stretch toward the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea, a new city begins to rise, not quietly, but with power, ambition, and vision. This city is Chichen Itza. Where the old Maya world was ruled by priest kings and astronomer scribes, Chichen Itza will be ruled by warrior priests, men who claim power not only from the stars, but from conquest. This is the rebirth of the Maya civilization. Legend speaks of a people known as the Itza, migrating from distant lands, perhaps from the west, perhaps from across the sea. Whether they were Maya descendants returning home, or outsiders bringing new blood and new gods, no one truly knows. But when they arrived, they brought a different style of leadership, one that blended spirituality with military might. They chose a sacred place where two natural cenotes, deep water-filled sinkholes, connected the city to the underworld of the gods. They named it Chichen Itza, the city at the mouth of the well of the Itza. Water, life, death, prophecy, all converged here. As we walk through the city, the stones whisper with meaning. Before us rises El Castillo, the temple of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. It is not merely a pyramid, it is a calendar in stone. 365 steps, one for each day of the solar year. 52 panels, reflecting the sacred cycle when the calendar resets. On the equinox, the setting sun casts a shadow that looks like a serpent slithering down the steps, merging with a carved serpent head at the base. This is cosmic engineering, a miracle of architecture and astronomy combined.
The Maya were not just building structures, they were shaping reality itself. Around this pyramid, the people gather in silence, watching the serpent descend. They believe it is Kukulkan returning to earth, fulfilling the promise of rebirth. Unlike the peaceful, scholarly cities of the past, Chichen Itza is carved with images of warriors, jaguar knights, and captives. This is a city that celebrates victory, sacrifice, and the strength of the state. We step into the Great Ball Court, the largest in all Mesoamerica. Here, the sacred ball game is not a sport. It is a cosmic battle, life against death, darkness against light. The captain of the winning team is often sacrificed, not as punishment, but as honor, offered to ascend to the gods. To the Maya, death is not the end. It is the greatest offering.
Unlike most civilizations, the Maya did not see time as a straight line moving from past to future. To them, time was cyclical, endlessly repeating itself in great cosmic ages. Each age, or sun, was born, flourished, and eventually destroyed, only for a new one to rise again. They believed we are living in one of those cycles now. To the Maya, the end is never the end. It is simply a point of transformation, a turning of the wheel. And in the shadows of Chichen Itza, beneath grand temples and sacred cenotes, that turning point was beginning to stir. The Maya kept two main calendars, the Zolkin, 260 days, sacred and mystical, used for rituals and prophecy, and the Hab, 365 days, solar, marking agricultural cycles. Together, they formed a 52-year calendar round, a sacred cycle of renewal. When the cycle reset, the Maya believed the world entered a moment of danger, a moment when creation could begin again or be destroyed. But beyond this, there was an even greater measure of time, the long count calendar, used to track the ages of the world over thousands of years. This calendar did not end. It turned. And one day, they believed, a new age would come. The old world would fall, and a new one would be born. In Chichen Itza, people gathered twice a year at the pyramid of Kukulkan to witness a miracle, the feathered serpent descending from the heavens in light and shadow. To them, this was not merely a symbol. It was a promise that one day the god would return to usher in a new age. But what would trigger that return? Would it be drought, famine, war, a sign in the sky, or something the Maya never could have predicted, a force from across the sea? Even as prophecies were studied and cycles carefully tracked, Chichen Itza began to weaken. Rival cities like Mayapan challenged its dominance. Drought once again descended on the land. Trade routes shifted. Internal power struggles tore at the heart of the city. The people looked to their calendars for answers. They believed they were nearing the end of an age, and the signs to them were clear. Sacred reservoirs dried. Stars appeared in unfamiliar positions. The voice of the gods, once strong, now fell silent. The heavens were changing, and with them,
The Maya were not afraid of the end. They had seen it before, in myth, in legend, in prophecy. They believed each ending was simply a chance for renewal. Temples were not abandoned in defeat, but in reverence. Cities were not destroyed, but left behind, offerings to the gods. In their final writings, the Maya did not speak of despair. They spoke of transition. The old world must fall, so the new world may rise. As the final great cities flickered in the fading light, the Maya people withdrew into smaller communities. They kept their rituals. They maintained their calendar. They waited. They believed deeply. This age was ending. Another was about to begin. But they could never have imagined how that transition would come, not from their gods, nor from within, but from across the ocean, on ships made of wood and iron, carrying men who had never heard of the long count. And yet, in a strange way, their arrival was exactly what the Maya had foretold. The prophecies were clear. A great change was coming. The cycle was turning.
The Maya had long watched the horizon for divine signs, comets, eclipses, the rising of Venus. These were messages from the gods. But one day, something appeared on the horizon that no prophecy had described in clear terms. It was not a star. It was not a serpent. It was a ship. Massive wooden vessels with white sails appeared along the coasts of the Yucatan Peninsula. The people who saw them did not know what they were. Some thought they were floating temples. Others believed they were the gods themselves returning, as foretold in ancient prophecies of the feathered serpent. The date was written into the Maya calendar, not as a battle, but as an omen. When the Spanish first stepped onto Maya shores, they were not met with war, but curiosity. The Maya brought them food, water, and gifts. They studied their armor, their horses, their beards, all unfamiliar, all otherworldly. But the peace did not last. The Spanish were not explorers. They were conquerors. They came not only for land, but for souls, believing it was their divine mission to bring Christianity to every corner of the earth. To them, the Maya were pagans. Their temples were the work of demons, their gods false idols to be destroyed. One by one, Maya city-states faced the Spanish not as a unified empire, but as individual kingdoms, long divided by old rivalries. This made them vulnerable. The Spanish had steel swords and guns. They brought horses, animals the Maya had never seen before. Worst of all, they carried diseases, invisible invaders that swept across the Maya lands like fire through dry grass. Smallpox, influenza, measles. Entire villages vanished before the Spanish even arrived on foot. To the Maya, these plagues were not diseases. They were the wrath of the gods. But the Maya did not surrender easily. Unlike the Aztec and Inca, the Maya had no single ruler to capture, no capital to destroy for instant victory.
They fought back with guerrilla warfare, retreating into the forests, launching surprise attacks, then vanishing into the trees. Some Maya kingdoms negotiated, some revolted, some spiritually adapted, blending Christianity with their ancient beliefs to preserve what they could in secret. The struggle was not a single war, but hundreds of battles, rebellions, and uprisings, spanning nearly 200 years. The Maya did not fall in a day. They refused to vanish.
The last independent Maya city, Noj-Peten, held out until the year 1697 AD, nearly 2 centuries after the fall of the Aztec. Spanish soldiers, using warships on the lake, launched a final assault. The city burned. The last Maya king was captured. The age of Maya rule had ended. And yet, the Maya people lived on. Unlike many civilizations that were erased, the Maya did not disappear. Their language survived, their traditions endured, their calendars were secretly kept, their children were raised with ancient stories whispered beside the fire. They may have lost their kingdom, but not their identity. Even as Spanish churches rose where temples once stood, and crosses replaced serpent stones, the Maya spirit endured, woven into every woven cloth, every glyph carved into hidden caves, every prayer offered to both saints and rain gods. Time, to the Maya, was not ending. It was simply beginning a new cycle. We have walked from the birth of the Maya to their greatest heights and through their deepest trials. But their story does not end in loss. The Maya are still here. Their descendants walk the same lands, speak the same languages, and follow the same sacred rhythms of time. In the final part, we will explore the legacy of the Maya, not as a ruined civilization, but as a living lineage that continues to shape our world today. The night grows quiet, and with it, the ancient Maya world drifts toward its long and mysterious twilight. There was no single day of collapse, no final battle that shattered it. Instead, the Maya cities, once filled with festivals and sacred dances, began to grow silent, one by one. Rulers lost power. The great pyramids ceased to rise. The stelae, the stone markers of kings, recorded fewer victories, until at last they recorded nothing at all. Scholars have long wondered, what truly ended the classic Maya world? There were many causes, each unfolding over generations, like a slow tightening of fate around a people who had once mastered time itself. Environmental pressures began to weigh heavily on the land. The Maya had cut vast forests for temples, plaster, and agriculture. The rains, upon which their entire world depended, began to fail. Layers of lake sediment reveal something devastating. Mega droughts lasting not for months, but for years at a time. Without water, crops failed. The sacred cenotes ran low. Famine crept across the land.
Political instability followed. The divine kings, whose blood fed the gods and whose rituals held the cosmos in balance, seemed powerless to stop the suffering. Commoners lost faith. Cities turned against one another, once allied kingdoms becoming rivals. Warfare broke out across the lowlands, not glorious conquest, but desperation, fighting over dwindling resources. Then came internal collapse. Trade routes that once brought obsidian, cacao, and jade began to crumble. People abandoned the temples and palaces to return to the countryside. Populations dispersed. The carved city-states were no longer cities, but scattered villages. And the once mighty lords, they disappeared into the jungle, their dynasties ending like smoke, fading into night. By the 9th century, cities such as Tikal, Copan, and Palenque stood nearly empty, their grand plazas taken back by vines and silence. The Maya did not vanish as a people. They survived. They simply left behind their kings and their pyramids. And yet, even as the old world collapsed, the Maya spirit lived on. Highland cities like Chichen Itza rose in the north, adapting, reshaping traditions into new forms. The Maya calendar continued. The language never died. To this day, millions of Maya descendants live across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, keeping alive the ancient threads of their culture. The great cities fell, but the soul of the Maya endured. Now, as the jungle reclaims the stones and time wraps the past in silence, we are left to wonder. What truly causes a civilization to fall? Is it conquest, climate, or something deeper? A loss of belief in the very foundations that once held their world together?